power rankings for round 1 Super Rugby 2018. If you guys aren't familiar with power rankings, any of you, usually called that by American sports. I think some British sports call them like form guide kind of thing. It's basically just a measure of where any one team is at any point in the season in comparison to the other teams. So they usually get more interesting the longer you go into the season. When teams have a strong start and then kind of fade away, they might still be high on the table, but realistically they're not in good form, that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's pretty hard in round 1 to judge how strong the teams are because we just haven't seen enough of them. And especially with this structure with format of Super Rugby 2018, because we've only seen 4 teams play in the first round. But nevertheless, you got to start somewhere, so let's give it a go. 4th place, while everyone else is still on the bye. I've put the Jaguares. So it seems a bit harsh to give them last place because they did put in a decent shift against the Stormers. So they were away from home, didn't take a huge squad to South Africa, but they definitely didn't disgrace themselves. You know, they were down by quite a lot at one point in the game, but they managed to fight their way back into it. They still had problems with discipline, but they proved themselves competitive in their first game. So they didn't miss out on a bonus point, so they're bottom of the table, and they lost to the Stormers, so that puts them at the bottom of the power rankings for this week. Next is the Sharks. Given that there are only 4 teams playing, 2 losers and 2 winners, the Sharks pretty much only have the option of being here. So they're above the Jaguares because realistically they played arguably tougher opposition. You know, last year's losing finalists, also away from home, and still got a bonus point. So they got within 7. So yeah, it's a good effort from the Sharks. They pushed the Lions who weren't, at the top of their game. Sharks obviously had some issues of their own, so not performing at 100%, totally normal at the start of the season. But yeah, I think 3rd's out of 4 is a respectable position to start with. Didn't look outclassed by the Lions really, so it was still very competitive. Next, in 2nd. So I'm putting the Stormers here, which differs from what the table shows at the moment. Obviously the Stormers won by 8, the Lions won by 7. Neither of the teams got a winning bonus point, so the Stormers are top of the log at the moment. But in terms of my power rankings, I'm saying the Stormers probably had the easier of the 2 games, and they didn't win it by kind of what they should have, I suppose. So they were predicted to win by a bit more than they did. They still managed to get the win, but they let the Jaguares kind of scare them, and there was one point where they really could have lost it. All the momentum was against them. They did manage to knuckle down and fight back, but losing that game was definitely on the cards. Whereas with the Lions game, I mean, they went down at the start, but you were never really in doubt that the Lions were going to win for that much of the game. Right, lucky last. So yeah, Lions go top of the log. Had a tough start with the Sharks coming to town. This is a rematch of last year's quarterfinal, so it was always going to be a tough game. But the Lions, despite having only kind of very limited preparation time, and that they only played the 1 preseason game, a lot of guys back from Japan who needed to be rested. So they started off kind of cold, started off rusty, and they still managed to beat off a challenge from one of their main rivals. Not comfortably, but at worst you thought by the end of the game the Sharks were going to steal a draw. You never thought that they were going to win it. They weren't really in a position to win it at the end. So yeah, rusty team still managed to get the win. Kudos to them for that. It shows kind of the talent that they've got there. So this is power rankings for week 1, only the 4 teams. It should become more interesting next week as we kind of fill the board up. It's going to be a bit funny given that some of the Some of the teams will have buys intermittently. So like I think it's the Sharks who've got the bye next week. They're probably going to drop from third because there's no way they can get a win. But they won't plummet because there's no way they can get a second loss. So yeah, we'll see how we go. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Do you think the Stormers should be above the Lions? Do you think the Jaguars should be above the Sharks? Do you think Sharks should be above the Stormers? A lot of people not impressed by what they saw from the Stormers today. All kind of debatable, and yeah, the season will tell us in the long run how they are really looking. All right, I'll talk to you guys a bit later. See ya.